Well, we're going to mix it up a little bit here for this last session. We're going to talk about some hot topics, some things that are buzzing around the industry that you all are talking about. Gen AI, of course. We'll give you our perspective on that. Other topics like the embedded insurance, talent, which is a common theme throughout the day, data, some other things. We'll share our experience and our insights and our research. I'm really delighted to be joined by Meredith Barnes-Cook, who is a partner in our consulting team, and I lead the consulting and research team at ReSource Pro. So I think what's interesting about this is these topics we're going to talk about have relevance across the entire ecosystem. So whether you're an agency, MGA, wholesaler, program administrator, carrier, reinsurer, tech company, whoever you are in the ecosystem, there are implications. Maybe it varies by segment, but there's implications for these different topic areas that we're going to discuss.
Yeah, fantastic. It's wonderful to be here. And for whatever we don't touch base on here relative to your position in the ecosystem, we love talking about this stuff. It's all that we do. So don't hesitate to catch us during the rest of the event or even after if you want to dive deep into any of this. So we're going to start with Gen AI, which is like the hype topic of the past few years. And, Mark, let's get past all the hype and the buzzwords. And from your point of view, what excites you about Gen AI for the insurance industry and what terrifies you?
I think before I offer my opinion, I'd really like to know what you all think in the audience. So I'm going to ask you if you think Gen AI is going to have a low, medium, or high impact on the insurance industry. All right, so who thinks low impact? Nobody. Who thinks it's a medium impact on the insurance industry? A number of folks. Who thinks high impact? Yeah, I think the majority of the room. And I would agree with you on that. I think of it a little bit differently, though. So when I think about the impact on the industry, I think, first of all, I don't think it's going to have a big impact on jobs. I don't think Gen AI, or AI in general, is going to take away many insurance professionals' jobs, right? I think it's more about augmentation, not replacement. Secondly, I don't think it's going to change the fundamentals of the insurance business, right? I don't think it's going to change the need for human empathy, for relationships, for deep experience in risk. What I do think it's going to change is I think it gives us an amazing opportunity to understand our customers better, to operate more efficiently, right, and to elevate the roles of all of you and all of your teams in the field. So I'm pretty excited about it. I think there's a lot of potential. And of course, the challenge is that there are use cases across the whole spectrum. And I moderated a couple of tables this morning in the breakouts where we talked about Gen AI. And there's just some really interesting examples of how you all are starting to use Gen AI tools, right? And so one of the things I think that is important is to kind of understand what are we talking about with Gen AI, generative AI. This is our definition, and we just say simply the key distinction between Gen AI and other AI technologies is that Gen AI creates content resembling human-generated content. And that can be text, it could be computer code, it could be database queries, it could be images, it can be any kind of content that is created, right? We train it on these vast amounts of data to understand patterns and then be able to use that to create these different kinds of content, right? And down below we show a number of different possibilities in the insurance industry. This is already happening, right? For automated class code identification or submission triaging, policy checking, some of these others, and many, many more across the whole ecosystem as well.
So Mark, if there was a takeaway, that what would you want our entire audience to walk away, how they think and reflect going forward about Gen AI?
So I think the biggest takeaway for me is don't get enamored with these Gen AI tools and race off and try them without any context, right? So first of all, your first focus should be around data, right? Because you've got to make sure that your data is high quality, it's consistent across your company, and it's organized in a way that you can provision it for use and get the kind of answers you want when you leverage these different kind of tools. So it's really about the data, and then experimenting, leveraging the tools in the context of your business strategy and your business issues and problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to data solutions. And when I talk about data solutions, we have had such an explosion of sources of data and different types of data, right? You heard Jamie talking about it this morning with Air Parametric, right? About all the sensors in the world that enable parametric insurance. But we have all kinds of real-time data, all kinds of sources from new providers, and it's actually a little bit overwhelming to consider how do we use the raw data, the new scores, all these kinds of information that we can ingest into different processes in the industry. So, Meredith, I know you just completed a whole set of research around underwriting and where underwriting is going and the solutions in that space. What's your perspective on data sources for underwriting, but also more broadly in insurance?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, you said every time you turn around, there's another solution coming to the market. So, what stunned me is how many data providers there are is the one piece of it. There's a piece of data out there for pretty much anything that you need. And then conversely, this really creative level of modeling of scoring, be it scoring a risk, doing things with doing a search just based on a name and an address and being able to predict from that what somebody's propensity is to potentially generate a claim. And that applies to both personal lines and for small businesses of 20 people or fewer, which just fascinates me. So we're seeing in the property, there's all these different elements of how to look at a physical risk, personal or commercial lines, be it from spatial looking at a roof to self-inspection solutions which I've had to do this for my own homeowner's insurance, to take pictures that are all then both using AI to make sure I didn't tamper with those photographs, but also to then analyze them and glean data out of them. So it's really been fascinating to see data, which really does power the end-to-end insurance value chain, how much of it there is. And I mean, Mark, and you've been studying this, what's been catching you by surprise?
Yeah, I've been following this data space for a long time, and we have clients that we support that are some of the data providers, right, big names that you probably know. And so they're still around. The companies that maybe 15 years ago were the main sources of data for property characteristics or vehicle driver information, business demographics, those kinds of things. Those providers are still there, but there's hundreds of new sources, right, from various entities. And what I think is most exciting is our move into the real-time world, right? We are instrumenting the world. Everything and anything that we as an industry insure, people, cows, like Jamie talked about, people, cows, houses, cars, whatever, right? They all are capable of having some kind of sensor or a computing device that's streaming real-time data that gives us insight to help manage risk better and to help us to understand risk better. So to me, that's what's exciting, and that's what, I don't know if it's taken me by surprise, but I think it's really evolved quickly.
Yeah. And with that, with the power of data comes great responsibility. And I think you've heard some conversations already today about the key is you have to know what's the problem you're trying to solve. You've got to really get down to, is it you're trying to get better risk analysis, more precise pricing? Or to the other team, is it a process challenge where today your underwriters and your UA spend way too much time blocking and tackling, validating and gathering additional information to have a complete submission? And then understanding the reality is there's probably not one best-in-class solution that is going to span all of the use cases that you may have. So you really have to be really precise in understanding the problem you solve. Then you need to be able to kind of order of magnitude understand the priority of how you want to go about them. And then you really don't wait to have everything in line before you try something. You have to get comfortable in an industry that's all about preventing bad things from happening, taking that chance of experimenting and crawl, walk, run through it. Have a premise of if we introduce this data source or this modeling, this scoring, we should see an improvement of X and have a foundational reason as to why, and then put that one piece in place and then start measuring. and keep tinkering until you get there, and then keep on going.
So what's your biggest takeaway regarding data solutions?
When you've seen one, you've seen one. And having spent a few months poring over countless solution providers' websites, don't even go on what they call themselves or their marketing message. You've got to dig deep, bring all your industry insight to the table and be like, oh, I get what this is, because it may not be what they called it. You know, there's this whole branding thing that happens, the marketing messaging, but it may not be at brass tacks what you thought it was, and so you have to dig deep. So now let's pivot to a fun topic about embedded insurance. And in our recently released 300th research report, we've actually now done 301 with the underwriting report, that's what we focused on. And we've come up with, again, similar to Gen AI, we've come up with a definition behind it. And I'd like, Mark, for you to provide kind of what's the significance of how we're defining it, and how should all of us in the ecosystem be thinking about it vis-a-vis our strategies?
So there's a lot of buzz around embedded insurance and what it means for the industry. Is it going to disrupt the industry? There are folks out there, just like some prior tech trends, saying, by 2030, X percentage of premium is going to be embedded, those kinds of things. So, but there's a lot of confusion about what is embedded insurance really? And so to add some clarity to it, this is our definition, right? We think the essence of it is it's insurance that's purchased in conjunction with another product or service during the same customer experience. So this is the first part of our definition, but we've said it doesn't have to be a non-insurance product. Of course, it can be a car you're buying at a dealership, or it can be purchasing a home during that process, but it can also be an insurance product with white-labeled other insurance products involved. In fact, we've been doing this in the industry for a long time, and maybe you have a couple of examples of that.
Yeah, the first one is equipment breakdown, a la Hartford steam boiler. That's been an embedded product for commercial building policies for a long time. It just shows up magically. And if you've never had a claim, you may never, as a business owner, even understand there's another insurance company sitting in the wings. The other one is, and one of the definitions we have is a fully integrated solution where, again, it's like really super silent. Airbnb, VRBO, when you put a product out there, a property to be rented, every time that property is rented behind the scenes, liability insurance is being acquired to cover that rental transaction. And there's no action, you can't not do it, and it protects everyone, both sides of that transaction.
Yeah, I think it really comes to life when we share some examples. So one of the things we did in this embedded insurance research report is we listed 35 or so different products, lines of business, and what the potential is for embedded insurance, right? And whether we thought, projected it was going to be high, medium, or low importance for the industry, right? So I'll give you just a couple of examples here, specific examples. So there's an MGA called Ahoy exclamation point, and they insure recreational boating folks, right? A marine finance company called Vantage Recreational Finance. So when you come to finance your new boat, you just embed the insurance in it, right? Those kinds of very logical examples. A company called GradGuard is working with universities for embedded insurance for tuition reimbursement. So if there's some reason that you can't finish your semester, defined reasons, you get your tuition back, right? There are innumerable examples like that of that and what we really feel is that this is really about in one sense, there's lots of opportunity tying embedded insurance to existing products, but it's also about covering new areas as well.
Yeah, I was at an event last week, and I heard about an MGA that is doing it for covering for fertility treatment. And I mean, it took my breath away. But think about that's something that who would ever thought it, but it makes complete sense once you think about it. And it really kind of restates the noble purpose of insurance.
So I think one of the big questions for this audience is, what does embedded insurance mean for agents, right? Because your first thought is, wait a minute, this is like a direct model almost, right? Does there need to be an agent involved with embedded insurance? And so the way we look at it is, I think embedded insurance is very important for the industry. It's going to grow in premium. They're going to be winners. They're going to be specific MGAs or specific carriers that focus on it and drive premium volume. But if you look in the context of a industry that's going to be a P&C industry that's going to be $1 trillion soon in the U.S., it's still not going to make a huge dent, even if we stretch out to 2030, right? So there'll be important developments there, right? So I think from an agent standpoint, it's mostly covering new spaces. We're addressing coverage gaps. So in a sense, I think embedded insurance may end up being more important for customers than individual insurers, right? Because now, whether you're an individual or business, there's lots of exposures you're effectively self-insuring that maybe you don't even realize you are, that now there will be coverages for.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think maybe we should move on to talk about talent, right? And Meredith, we've done a lot of research in the talent space as well, and obviously I've been following this for quite some time. As we did strategy work with carriers, with MGAs, with others, coming out of the pandemic, even though we were talking business strategy, right? What markets should I be in? How should I organize? Those kinds of things. The biggest issue kept coming out with talent, the talent shortage. And you've heard a lot about it today. So what's your perspective on where we are with talent?
Yeah, I mean, we are a people-driven industry. We provide service, create our products, and support and protect risks that are owned and associated to people. And we are truly in a perfect storm right now in terms of where we stand, which personally breaks my heart as a lifelong insurance person. But you have, McKinsey study, 65% of people who leave an insurance job leave the industry in its totality. You've heard before about the 50% of the workforce, 400,000 people who will be retirement eligible by 2036. This push for preferring remote work, which is really a continuing challenge, the sense of tension that's arrived between the employers and the employees. 4%, by next year, 75% of the workforce in general will be millennials, and only 4% of that workforce population sees insurance as a career. And then you've got, this whole, the understandable shift. Both agencies and carriers are leaning forward more into augmenting talent. And also the recent study, Jacobson just came out with they do a great talent study that they release out to the public. They've got 53% of these carriers are going to be adding staff over the next year, which is kind of challenging as you're watching more and more people leave. So, what we have is this, we've got low industry unemployment and low unemployment overall. And, as Jacobson releases their study about carriers wanting to hire for growth, the additional challenge is, to a vast majority, 70 to 80% of the time, they would prefer to hire experienced people, the same people who, again, are presumably heading out into the retirement era. So this is putting so much pressure on the people who are there, which is another trigger for turnover. So again, we're in this perfect storm, this 360 loop of pressure points. And so what everyone in the industry, be it agencies, carriers, MGAs, need to be thinking about is, how can technology enhance the most powerful and most expensive asset that you have, which is your people? How can you look at every time a human touches something and say, is that optimizing? Is that part of my secret sauce? Is that differentiating my product, my experience, my value proposition in the industry? And then for that critical, high volume, high value, and kind of, but less complex work, that is where there is the opportunity for automation or for outsourcing, or some combination of the two. There's discussion now, and we're even doing it ourselves, of business process outsourcing, but also bringing more automation ourselves behind the scenes to drive greater speed and accuracy and precision. So, really thinking about not technology as a means of replacing people, but as augmenting to really optimize when a human comes in the loop. Is that where either you need them to be or where your customer wants them to be? Those are potentially two different answers. So we really encourage you is to be having this talent strategy of, where do you need to be, fixing and getting prepared for next? And then what comes beyond that, and what's your longer term strategy of what roles need to evolve? And as part of all this, that highly tended, that 50% of your workforce that is maturing, there's a bit of a silent misassumption of those who are more tenured are less capable of driving change and transformation and optimization. They're your experts. They're the people on the front lines. They understand how you got to where you are, and they're some of the people who are best positioned to give you that thought leadership of where you should be heading to next over the next 10 to 20 years.
So I think there's two things that are really important to consider for talent. One is, you saw Dan's slide on how roles are changing, and this is an area we've been constantly looking at, thinking about different roles of industry professionals across the ecosystem, and recognizing that with automation, with AI, just with the evolving industry, roles might be very different 3 to 5 years. So how are you planning for that in your career paths? The second thing, which is a concern, is that the more we automate the entry-level tasks, it may become more difficult as we bring people into the industry. How do we train them? How do they understand, that domain, that expertise area, that profession that we're bringing them into? You can't just bring them in, right, as a seasoned account manager or underwriter or whoever it might be. So I don't have the answer to that one, but that's something we all need to think about. I'm just going to jump back quickly to connected vehicles. I skipped it before because I was afraid I can talk about connected vehicles all day long, and I wanted to make sure I was giving Meredith time to talk about talent. So, but I do think the mobility environment, the way that's evolving, is vitally important for our industry. And what this is showing is that, this isn't just about, are we moving to all autonomous vehicles or electric vehicles, and how's that changing risk, and what does that mean for us in terms of the way we distribute it, and we cover it, and we price it, all those things. Of course that matters. But also recognize that, we've been building safety into vehicles for a long, long time, right? In the last decade, we've been doing a lot of the ADAS, right? Automated driver assistance systems that are in vehicles. We've been doing telematics, gathering data about driver behavior in vehicles, right? And we have different levels of autonomy in the autonomous vehicles, right? We have the sharing economy, right? Different modes of transportation, new alternative modes of transportation. So our view is that, this graph kind of shows how, if you look at all those things, by the time we get to maybe 2035, there's a very high impact on auto insurance and fleet insurance as well, right? So anybody that's in that game, whether it's personal lines, commercial lines, it's something we have to continually monitor to see how it's evolving, and the mix of vehicles on the road, and how that changes the risk and the liability and all those kinds of issues, and the claim costs, right? Yeah. Because that's one of the issues as well. Yep. So I'm going to turn it back to Meredith to just wrap up.
I would just say on the connected vehicles, as originally a claims adjuster, it breaks my heart I won't get to sit on a desk and do a liability investigation, with some of these really enhanced driving systems. My son owns a Tesla, because you have to bring software engineers into the mix and start reviewing code, I think. So we hope that this conversation, opened a few topics, some new thoughts, maybe some gears are turning in the room. Again, we always love to talk about this. We're here now, and we're here ongoing to have continued conversations with you on any of this. We also have, as you can see, we've got some QR codes. We have some surveys going. You're all our industry experts. You're our point of view. So we hope you'll take a moment, just a few minutes, participate in one or both, depending on what fits your lanes, and earn some points for the game. We always like to gamify some competition here. And then we really welcome the opportunity to catch up with you at breaks. We've got a booth out there for strategy, so feel free to catch us, dinners, tomorrow evening's gathering. We really welcome the opportunity to see how we continue to support you. So thank you all very much.